A brilliant mathematician saw numbers where others saw nothing, and one struggling student would help him remember what it means to be human. But what happens when genius becomes isolation and teaching becomes salvation? Comment where in the world you're watching from, then let's begin. The rain falls steadily over Seoul, South Korea, turning the city streets into reflective ribbons of light. Neon signs glow through the downpour, reds and blues and greens advertising restaurants, karaoke bars, convenience stores. The year is recent, the present moment, though the exact date feels less important than the atmosphere, the weight of expectation that hangs over this city like the low gray clouds. In the Gangnam district, where wealth and ambition concentrate in towering apartment buildings and prestigious educational institutions, a small private academy occupies the third floor of an aging commercial building. The sign outside reads Top Education Academy in Korean characters, the paint slightly faded, the letters promising excellence that feels increasingly difficult to deliver. Inside, fluorescent lights buzz overhead, casting harsh white illumination across rows of desks. The classroom is cramped, filled wall to wall with students wearing identical school uniforms, white shirts, dark slacks or skirts, faces bent over textbooks and practice exams. The air smells of instant coffee, eraser shavings and teenage anxiety. At the front of the room stands Ji Woo-sok, a man in his early 40s with graying hair and a rumpled appearance that suggests he stopped caring about first impressions years ago. He wears a cardigan over a dress shirt, both slightly wrinkled and thick-framed glasses that constantly slip down his nose. He writes mathematical equations on the whiteboard with mechanical precision, his handwriting neat despite the speed of his movements. The equation he's writing is complex, differential calculus, university-level material that these high school students are expected to master if they hope to pass the Suneng, the notoriously difficult college entrance exam that will determine their entire futures. The fundamental theorem of calculus, Woo-sok says without turning to face the class, his voice flat and professorial, states that differentiation and integration are inverse operations. If you understand this relationship, you understand the foundation of all advanced mathematics. He continues writing, filling the board with symbols and numbers that flow from his mind with the ease of native language. For Woo-sok, mathematics isn't something learned but something innate. Patterns he sees in everything. Relationships between numbers that reveal themselves to him like secrets whispered by the universe itself. Behind him, the students watch with varying degrees of comprehension. Some take frantic notes, their pens racing to keep up. Others stare blankly, lost somewhere around the third step of the proof. A few have given up entirely and gaze out the rain-streaked windows, their minds wandering to anything other than integrals and derivatives. Among those lost is Lee Ji-woo, a 17-year-old boy who sits in the back corner, his textbook open but unread, his notebook covered in doodles rather than equations. Ji-woo has a round face and perpetually tired eyes, the look of someone who hasn't slept properly in months. He wears his uniform loosely, his tie askew, his hair slightly too long and falling into his eyes. Mathematics to Ji-woo is an incomprehensible foreign language. He sees the symbols on the board but can't decode their meaning. When he looks at equations, they remain abstract squiggles rather than resolving into logical relationships. He's tried, God knows he's tried, spending hours staring at textbooks, attending every academy session, hiring private tutors with money his mother can barely afford. Nothing helps. Woo-sok turns from the board and scans the classroom. His gaze is clinical, analytical, quickly categorizing each student's level of understanding through micro-expressions and body language. When his eyes reach Ji-woo, they pause. Lee Ji-woo, Woo-sok says, "Come solve problem 7 on the board." Ji-woo's stomach drops. Around him, other students turn to stare. He stands slowly, his legs feeling weak, and makes his way to the front of the classroom. The whiteboard looms before him, covered in Woo-sok's elegant mathematical notation. Problem 7 sits at the bottom, a relatively simple derivative problem compared to the complexity above it. But to Ji-woo it might as well be written in ancient hieroglyphics. He picks up the marker with a trembling hand, stares at the problem, tries to remember the rules Woo-sok explained, the formulas he's supposed to have memorized. Nothing comes. His mind is blank, paralyzed by anxiety and the awareness of 20 pairs of eyes watching him fail. 30 seconds pass. A minute. Ji-woo writes nothing. The silence grows oppressive. "You didn't study," Woo-sok says. "It's not a question, just a statement of observable fact." "I did study," Ji-woo manages, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just don't understand." "Then you didn't study correctly," Woo-sok interrupts. "Mathematics isn't about understanding. It's about pattern recognition. If you've seen enough examples, the solution becomes obvious. Sit down." Ji-woo returns to his seat, his face burning with humiliation. Around him, some students smirk. Others show sympathy. Most just return their attention to the board, grateful it wasn't them called up to expose their inadequacy. The class continues for another hour. When it finally ends, students pack their bags with the exhausted relief of prisoners granted temporary parole. They have maybe 2 hours before their next academy class, English or Korean literature or science. The Soonyoung preparation consumes their lives, every waking moment dedicated to the single exam that will determine which university accepts them, which in turn will determine their job prospects, which will determine their social status, which will determine the entire trajectory of their adult lives. The pressure is crushing. And for students like Ji-woo who struggle despite their efforts, it feels like drowning in slow motion. Ji-woo walks home through the rain, his umbrella doing little to keep him dry. Water soaks through his shoes, making his socks squelch with each step. He doesn't hurry. Home holds no particular appeal. The apartment complex where he lives is modest, an older building in a less prestigious neighborhood, the paint fading, the hallways dimly lit. His family's unit is on the 4th floor. He climbs the stairs slowly, dreading what awaits. Inside the small 2-bedroom apartment, his mother is preparing dinner in the cramped kitchen. Park Min-jung is in her late 40s, her face lined with worry and exhaustion from working double shifts as a restaurant manager. She wears an apron over casual clothes, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "You're late," she says without looking up from the pot she's stirring. "Academy ran over?" "Yeah," Ji-woo lies, not mentioning that he stayed behind to avoid walking home with classmates, to delay this moment of facing his mother's inevitable questions about his progress. "How was the math class? Are you understanding it better?" "It's getting easier," Ji-woo lies again. The lies come automatically now, a protective barrier against his mother's disappointment and his own shame. Min-jung finally turns to look at him, her expression softening. "Ji-woo, yeah, I know it's hard, but you have to keep trying. The Soonyoung is only 8 months away. If you can just get into a decent university." "I know, Mom," Ji-woo interrupts gently. He's heard this speech countless times. He knows about the money she's spent on academy fees, on textbooks, on tutors. He knows about her dreams for him, a college degree, a professional career, a life better than hers. He knows he's failing her, failing himself, failing the future they both desperately need. They eat dinner in relative silence, the television playing in the background, some variety show with loud hosts and exaggerated sound effects. After dinner, Ji-woo retreats to the small room he shares with his younger sister. She's spending the night at a friend's house, giving him rare solitude. He sits at his desk and opens his mathematics textbook, stares at the problems for his homework, picks up his pencil, stares some more. The numbers refuse to make sense. They sit on the page inert and meaningless, mocking his inability to decode them. He thinks about Woo-suk's words, pattern recognition, but he sees no patterns, only chaos. An hour passes. He's completed 3 problems out of 20, and he's not confident any of his answers are correct. Frustration builds in his chest, pressure behind his eyes. He wants to cry but won't allow himself. He's 17, too old for tears, too aware that crying solves nothing. His phone buzzes with a message from a classmate, a photo of their completed homework, offering him the answers to copy. Ji-woo stares at the photo for a long moment. He knows he should refuse, should struggle through on his own, should maintain some shred of academic integrity. He copies the answers. What else can he do? Meanwhile, across the city in a small studio apartment in a quieter neighborhood, Ji-woo-suk sits at his desk, surrounded by books and papers. His living space is sparse, almost monastic. A single room containing a bed, a desk, bookshelves overflowing with mathematics texts and little else. No decorations, no photos, no personal touches that might reveal anything about the man who lives here. Ji-woo-suk doesn't need much. His life exists almost entirely in his mind, in the abstract realm of numbers and equations, where he feels most at home. The physical world is just an inconvenient backdrop, the body just a vehicle he inhabits, while his consciousness plays in mathematical dimensions most people can't perceive. He works on a problem at his desk, not for the academy, not for any practical purpose, but for its own sake. It's a problem in number theory, one he read about in a journal years ago, one that has no solution yet despite brilliant minds attempting it for decades. Woo-suk doesn't expect to solve it tonight, or this year, or possibly ever, but the attempt is what matters, the process of exploring the mathematical landscape, of following logical paths to see where they lead. His phone rings, interrupting his concentration. He ignores it. It rings again, sighs with irritation. He picks up. "Professor G," a voice says. It's the director of the academy, a businessman in his 50s who views education primarily as a revenue stream. "We need to talk about your retention rates." Woo-suk says nothing, waiting. 3 more students quit your class this month. The director continues. "Their parents say you're too difficult, too cold. They're going to competitor academies where the teachers are more encouraging." "I teach mathematics correctly," Woo-suk says. "If students want encouragement rather than education, they should hire cheerleaders." "Professor G, I understand your commitment to rigor, but these students are customers. Their parents pay significant fees. We need to keep them satisfied. Then perhaps you should teach the classes yourself," Woo-suk suggests flatly. A pause on the line. "I'm not trying to be adversarial. I'm asking you to be more accessible, smile occasionally, Praise students when they show improvement. Make them feel good about themselves. Mathematics doesn't care about feelings. Woo-suk replies. A proof is either correct or incorrect. An answer is either right or wrong. Telling students they're doing well when they're failing doesn't help them. It just delays their confrontation with reality. Nevertheless, the director says, his tone hardening slightly, I need you to adjust your approach, or I'll have to consider whether you're the right fit for this academy. The implicit threat hangs in the air. Woo-suk doesn't particularly care about the job. Teaching at a private academy was never his ambition, but he needs the income. His previous life, his previous career, ended years ago in circumstances he prefers not to remember. I'll consider your feedback, Woo-suk says, which they both know means he'll change nothing. After hanging up, he returns to his problem, but his concentration is broken. He stares at the equations, but now they feel contaminated by the conversation, by the intrusion of human concerns into the pure realm of mathematics. He stands and walks to his window, looking out at the Seoul skyline. Somewhere out there are thousands of students like those in his class, grinding through academy sessions, sacrificing their adolescence on the altar of test scores and university admissions. The system is brutal, inefficient, psychologically damaging. Woo-suk knows this intellectually, but he also knows that for some rare students, those with natural mathematical aptitude, those who see the patterns as he does, the system can unlock something extraordinary. Those students are why he teaches, not the struggling masses who will forget everything the moment the Soonyoung ends, but the exceptional few who might actually love mathematics for its own sake. He hasn't found such a student in years, but he keeps looking. The next day, Ji-woo arrives early to the academy, hoping to get help from Woo-suk before class begins. He's decided to stop pretending he understands, to admit his confusion and ask for actual assistance rather than continuing to fail in silence. He finds Woo-suk alone in the classroom, writing on the board, not preparing for the day's lesson but working on some personal mathematical exploration, equations that look nothing like the standard curriculum. Professor Ji-woo says hesitantly from the doorway. Woo-suk turns, his expression neutral. Class doesn't start for 40 minutes. I know, I wanted to ask, could you help me with something? I'm having trouble with derivatives. I don't understand how to apply the chain rule. Woo-suk studies him for a moment, his analytical gaze making Ji-woo feel like a specimen under a microscope. You copied yesterday's homework. Ji-woo's face flushes. How did you know? Your answers were correct, but your methodology showed no understanding of the underlying principles. Also, your handwriting changed midway through the assignment. Obvious signs of copying. I'm sorry, Ji-woo says quietly. I didn't know how to do it, and copying doesn't help you learn. Woo-suk interrupts. It just creates the illusion of progress while ensuring you fall further behind. I know, that's why I'm here. I want to actually understand. Woo-suk considers this. Most students who fall behind eventually give up, accepting their limitations and focusing their energy on subjects where they have more natural ability. This boy is different, persistent despite obvious lack of aptitude, willing to admit ignorance rather than hide behind false confidence. Show me your approach, Woo-suk says, gesturing to the board. Work through a chain rule problem. I'll observe. Ji-woo approaches the board nervously. Woo-suk writes a problem. Find the derivative of 3x quadrat 54. Ji-woo stares at it. He knows the chain rule theoretically. Take the derivative of the outer function, multiply by the derivative of the inner function. But when he tries to apply it, his mind tangles in confusion about which part is outer and which is inner. How to actually execute the steps. He writes hesitantly, 4 3x quadrat 5 thu krib, then stops. I don't know what comes next. Why did you write 4 3x quadrat 5 thu krib? Because the outer function is something to the fourth power, so the derivative is 4 times that something to the third power. Correct. Continue. But now I'm supposed to multiply by the derivative of the inner function, which is 3x quadrat 5, so Ji-woo writes 6x. Woo-suk nods. Correct again. You've solved it. Ji-woo looks at the board in surprise. I have. Your answer is 4 3x quadrat 5 thu krib 6x, which simplifies to 24x 3x quadrat 5 thu krib. Correct. But I didn't understand it. I just followed the rule mechanically. Understanding comes with repetition, Woo-suk says. You see the pattern enough times, your brain begins recognizing it automatically. Right now you're thinking consciously about each step. Eventually it becomes intuitive. Will that really happen? Ji-woo asks skeptically. Because I've been doing problems for months and nothing feels intuitive yet. Woo-suk pauses, considering his answer carefully. Not everyone develops mathematical intuition at the same rate. Some people see patterns immediately. Others need thousands of repetitions. A few never develop it at all. But you solved this problem correctly when I guided you through it, which means your brain is capable of the logical steps. That's promising. It's the closest thing to encouragement Woo-suk has offered any student in months. Ji-woo feels something shift, not quite hope, but maybe the precursor to hope. The possibility that he's not hopelessly stupid, just slower to understand. Could I come early like this regularly? Ji-woo asks. To work through problems with you? Woo-suk should say no. He's not paid for extra tutoring time. He has his own research to pursue. Getting personally invested in struggling students leads nowhere good. He learned that lesson painfully years ago.
But something about this boy's earnestness, his willingness to confront his own limitations reminds Woo-suk of why he became a teacher in the first place, back before everything fell apart. Twice a week, Woo-suk says finally. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, 7 a.m. Don't be late. Ji-woo's face breaks into a genuine smile, the first Woo-suk has seen from him. Thank you, Professor. I won't be late, I promise. Over the following weeks, Ji-woo arrives at the academy at 6:55 a.m. every Tuesday and Thursday, sometimes still half asleep, always determined. Woo-suk is already there, working on his own problems, and transitions seamlessly into tutoring mode when Ji-woo arrives. The sessions follow a pattern. Woo-suk assigns a problem. Ji-woo attempts it, usually getting stuck partway through. Woo-suk identifies exactly where the confusion lies, not through lengthy explanations, but through precise questions that force Ji-woo to examine his own thinking. Why did you choose that approach? What does this symbol represent? If x equals 3, what would this expression evaluate to? The questions are surgical, cutting through vague understanding to expose the specific gaps in Ji-woo's knowledge.
Then Woo-suk fills those gaps with minimal explanation, just enough information to allow Ji-woo to continue forward. It's not warm teaching. Woo-suk doesn't praise lavishly or provide emotional support, but it's effective. Ji-woo begins to see patterns he couldn't perceive before. Equations start making a kind of sense. Not fully intuitive yet, but no longer completely alien. His regular classwork improves. He stops copying homework, instead struggling through problems on his own, making mistakes but learning from them. His test scores creep upward, still below average, but rising steadily from the bottom of the class. Other students notice. Some whisper that he's getting special treatment, that Woo-suk plays favorites. A few ask if they can join the morning sessions. Woo-suk refuses them all except Ji-woo. He doesn't explain why, even to himself. Perhaps it's the boy's persistence. Perhaps it's something else. One morning, Ji-woo arrives to find Woo-suk staring at his phone with an unusual expression, something almost like pain, quickly masked when he notices Ji-woo's presence. Everything okay, Professor? Ji-woo asks. Fine, Woo-suk says curtly, setting the phone face down on the desk. Let's begin. But he's distracted during the session, his explanations less precise than usual, his attention drifting. Ji-woo works through problems in silence, sensing that questions would be unwelcome. Later that day, curiosity gets the better of Ji-woo. During lunch break, he searches Woo-suk's name online, something he probably should have done months ago. What he finds surprises him. Articles from 8 years ago, news coverage, academic journals. Ji-woo-suk, rising star in mathematical research, solves century-old conjecture at age 34. Korean mathematician nominated for Fields Medal. Promising career ended by plagiarism scandal. Ji-woo reads deeper, piecing together the story. Woo-suk had been a professor at Seoul National University, one of the most prestigious positions in Korean academia. He'd published groundbreaking work in number theory. Then a graduate student accused him of stealing her research and publishing it under his own name. The accusation was never proven definitively, but the scandal destroyed Woo-suk's career. The university asked for his resignation. Academic journals retracted his papers. Colleagues distanced themselves. Whether guilty or innocent became irrelevant. The taint of suspicion was enough. Woo-suk fell from mathematical superstar to private academy instructor, from cutting-edge research to teaching high school calculus to indifferent teenagers. No wonder he seems bitter. No wonder he teaches with such emotional detachment. Ji-woo doesn't mention what he's learned. It feels like a violation to have searched, like he's intruded on private pain. But it changes how he sees Woo-suk. No longer just a cold, difficult teacher, but a man who lost everything and is going through the motions of a diminished life. 3 months into their morning sessions, something shifts. Ji-woo is working through a particularly complex integration problem, when suddenly, finally, he sees the pattern. Not just mechanically following rules, but actually understanding the relationship between the functions, perceiving how the pieces fit together. He solves the problem not through rote memorization but through genuine comprehension. His hand moves across the board with newfound confidence, each step flowing naturally from the previous one. When he finishes, he turns to Woo-suk with barely contained excitement. I understood that. I actually understood it. Woo-suk examines the solution carefully. Your work is correct. More importantly, your methodology shows logical progression. You're not just applying formulas anymore. You're thinking mathematically. For Woo-suk, this is effusive praise. Ji-woo grins despite himself. Does this mean I'm getting good at math? No, Woo-suk says bluntly, but there's something softer in his tone. You're getting adequate. There's still a vast distance between adequate and good. But adequate is sufficient for the Soonyoung, and adequate is far better than where you started. Ji-woo's smile doesn't fade. Adequate feels like a miracle compared to hopeless. Over the next weeks, Ji-woo's progress accelerates. Concepts that once seemed impossible begin clicking into place. He starts finishing homework without help, scoring above average on practice tests, even occasionally raising his hand in class to answer questions voluntarily. His mother notices the change. Something's different with you, she says one evening. You seem lighter. I'm finally understanding math, Ji-woo explains. Professor G has been helping me. He's tough, but he's good at explaining things. Minjung's expression fills with relief and gratitude. You should thank him properly. Maybe we could invite him to dinner. Jiwoo imagines Woo-sok sitting at their small dining table, making awkward conversation with his mother and cringes. I don't think he's the dinner type, but I'll thank him. One Thursday morning, Jiwoo arrives to find Woo-sok not working on mathematics but reading a book, a worn paperback of classical Korean poetry. He quickly sets it aside when Jiwoo enters, but not before Jiwoo glimpses the cover. I didn't know you read poetry, Jiwoo says. Everyone reads something, Woo-sok replies dismissively, pulling out mathematics materials, but Jiwoo persists. Do you like it? Poetry? Woo-sok pauses, clearly debating whether to engage. Poetry and mathematics aren't as different as people assume. Both seek elegant expression of complex ideas. Both find beauty in precision and pattern. I never thought of it that way. Most people don't. They treat mathematics as purely logical, art as purely emotional, but the best mathematics is artistic, and the best art contains mathematical structure. It's the most personal thing Woo-sok has shared in their months of sessions. Jiwoo senses an opening. Can I ask you something, Professor? Why do you teach at an academy instead of a university? Woo-sok's expression closes immediately. That's not relevant to your studies. I know, I'm just curious. I looked you up online. I read about. Then you know why. Woo-sok interrupts coldly. Can we begin today's lesson? Jiwoo retreats, regretting his curiosity. They work through problems in tense silence. But near the end of the session, as Jiwoo is packing his materials, Woo-sok speaks unexpectedly. The accusation was false. Jiwoo stops, not sure if he heard correctly. The plagiarism accusation. Woo-sok continues, not looking at Jiwoo but staring at the whiteboard. It was false. The student's research was her own. I never claimed otherwise. But once the allegation was made, proving innocence became impossible. Academia runs on reputation. Mine was destroyed. That's not fair, Jiwoo says quietly. Fairness is a human construct, with no mathematical basis, Woo-sok replies. Do you miss it? University research, every day. The admission seems to surprise Woo-sok himself. But that life is over. This is what remains. He finally looks at Jiwoo, his expression unguarded for just a moment. Teaching you these past months, it's reminded me why I chose this profession originally. Before the research, before the publications, I wanted to help people see mathematical beauty. You're not a natural mathematician, Jiwoo. You have to work 3 times as hard as students with innate talent. But you've improved more than anyone I've taught in years. That matters. Jiwoo feels unexpected emotion rising in his throat. Thank you, Professor, for not giving up on me. I didn't do anything special. You did the work. You showed me how. Woo-sok nods slightly, then returns to his usual crisp demeanor. Enough sentiment. Tomorrow we tackle differential equations. Bring your focus. But something has shifted between them. No longer just teacher and student, but something approaching friendship. 2 months before the Soon-young, Jiwoo's father reappears. Jiwoo comes home one evening to find a strange man sitting in their living room. Thin, disheveled, with the haunted look of someone who's been living rough. His mother sits across from the man, her face pale with shock and anger. Jiwoo-ya, she says, her voice strained. This is your father. Jiwoo hasn't seen his father since he was 8 years old. The man abandoned them, disappeared into a spiral of gambling debts and alcohol, leaving Minjung to raise Jiwoo and his sister alone. Now he's back, muttering apologies, claiming he's changed, asking for money. I just need enough to get back on my feet, his father pleads. I've got a job opportunity, a fresh start. I'll pay you back. You need to leave, Minjung says, her voice shaking. You left us with nothing. You don't get to come back now asking for help. The argument escalates. Jiwoo's father grows angry when refused, his voice rising, his gestures aggressive. Jiwoo steps between them, his heart pounding. Get out, Jiwoo says, now. His father stares at him with bloodshot eyes. You don't talk to your father that way. You're not my father. Fathers don't abandon their families. Leave. Eventually, after more shouting and threats, the man leaves. But the encounter shatters the fragile stability of their household. Minjung breaks down crying, overwhelmed by shame and old wounds reopened. Jiwoo holds her, trying to be strong, trying to comfort her while his own emotions churn. That night he can't study. He stares at his mathematics textbook, but the numbers swim meaninglessly. All his progress, all his newfound understanding, feels suddenly pointless. What does calculus matter when his family is falling apart? What good is the Soon-young if they can't even afford rent? Jiwoo's grades plummet. He stops coming to the morning sessions with Woo-sok, can't bring himself to show up. He sits through regular classes in a fog, barely present. His practice test scores drop back toward where they started. After a week of absences, Woo-sok calls Jiwoo's phone. Jiwoo lets it go to voicemail. Woo-sok calls again. Finally, Jiwoo answers. Where have you been? Woo-sok asks without preamble. I'm sorry, Professor. I can't. I need to take a break. The Soon-young is 7 weeks away. You don't have time for breaks. I can't focus right now. Family problems. There's a pause on the line. Meet me tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. We'll talk. Professor, I don't think. 7 a.m. Jiwoo. Don't make me come to your house. The call ends. Despite everything, Jiwoo finds himself smiling slightly at Woo-seok's characteristic bluntness. The next morning, Jiwoo drags himself to the academy. He arrives to find Woo-seok waiting with coffee, 2 cups from the convenience store downstairs. He hands one to Jiwoo. I don't normally do this, Woo-seok says. Personal conversations, emotional support, that's not my strength. But you've worked too hard to quit now. It's not about quitting, Jiwoo says. It's about everything else feels more important than math right now. Tell me what happened. Jiwoo hesitates, then the story pours out. His father's return, his mother's distress, the financial anxiety, the feeling that studying for an exam is a luxury they can't afford when survival feels precarious. Woo-seok listens without interrupting. When Jiwoo finishes, he's quiet for a long moment. When I lost my position at the university, Woo-seok finally says, I spent 6 months doing nothing. I couldn't work, couldn't think, couldn't see the point of mathematics when my entire career had been destroyed by something outside my control. A friend, one of the few who still talk to me, told me something useful. He said crisis doesn't pause life, it's part of life. You don't wait for problems to resolve before continuing. You continue while resolving them. But how? Jiwoo asks. How do you focus when everything's chaos? You compartmentalize. For 2 hours each morning, you're here doing mathematics. The rest of the day you deal with whatever needs dealing with. But during those 2 hours you give yourself permission to focus on something you can control. Mathematics is predictable. Life isn't. That's why mathematics can be refuge. Jiwoo considers this. You came back to teaching because it was something you could control. Partially. Also because I needed income. Woo-seok's dry humor surfaces briefly. But yes. When everything else was uncertain, mathematics remained consistent. Problems still had solutions. Proof still held. That stability helped. What if I can't get back to where I was? What if I've lost all my progress? You haven't lost understanding. You've lost momentum. Momentum can be rebuilt. Woo-seok pulls out a worksheet. Let's start with something simple. Rebuild your confidence. They work through basic problems. Material Jiwoo mastered months ago. The familiarity is comforting. His brain remembers the patterns even though his motivation is depleted. Slowly the fog lifts slightly. Better? Woo-seok asks after an hour. A little, Jiwoo admits. Good. Come back tomorrow. And the day after. We'll get you ready for the Soonyoung. Your family problems won't disappear. But you can still pass this exam. Both things can be true simultaneously. Jiwoo returns to the morning sessions. The work is harder now. He's distracted, tired, emotionally depleted. But Woo-seok adjusts his teaching approach. He gives shorter, more focused problems. He checks in about Jiwoo's well-being without being invasive. He's patient in ways he's never been with other students. At home things stabilize somewhat. Jiwoo's father doesn't return. Minjung recovers from the shock and redoubles her work hours, determined to save enough money for emergencies. She apologizes to Jiwoo for the disruption, for the instability. You have nothing to apologize for, Jiwoo tells her. None of this is your fault. Just promise me you'll do your best on the Soonyoung, she says. That's all I ask. Your best, I promise. With 5 weeks until the exam, Jiwoo's scores begin recovering. Not fully back to his peak, but climbing steadily. He works with desperate intensity, knowing how much is riding on this single test: his future, his mother's hopes, the culmination of years of struggle. Woo-seok pushes him harder than ever, drilling him on weak areas, forcing him to explain his reasoning out loud, building not just knowledge but confidence. The sessions extend beyond their allotted 2 hours. Woo-seok never mentions compensation, never suggests this is beyond his obligation. Other students notice the special attention and complain. The academy director calls Woo-seok again. You're showing favoritism. Other parents are upset. I'm helping a student who needs help and is willing to work for it. Woo-seok replies. If other students want the same attention, they can arrive at 7 a.m. This isn't sustainable, Professor G. I'll decide what's sustainable for me. The director backs off, recognizing he can't force the issue without losing his best mathematics instructor. The day of the Soonyoung arrives cold and gray. Across South Korea, hundreds of thousands of students converge on testing centers, their futures hanging on the next 8 hours. Parents gather outside test sites, some crying, others praying at makeshift shrines. Jiwoo arrives at his designated testing location, a middle school converted for the day into an examination center. His hands shake despite the hours of preparation. He sees Woo-seok standing near the entrance, unexpected and somehow reassuring. Professor, what are you doing here? Making sure you arrive on time, Woo-seok says, and telling you one last thing. You're ready. You've worked harder than anyone in that building. Trust your preparation. What if I blank out? What if I panic? Then you breathe, skip that problem, move to the next one and return later. The exam doesn't require perfection. It requires competence. You're competent. Jiwoo nods, drawing strength from Woo-seok's certainty. Thank you, Professor, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Thank me after you pass. Jiwoo enters the building with other students, all wearing identical nervous expressions. They're led to classrooms, seated at individual desks, given strict instructions about procedure. The atmosphere is suffocating with tension. The exam begins. The first section is Korean, Ji-woo's strongest subject. He works through it steadily, his confidence building. Then mathematics. The problems appear on the page, and for one terrifying moment his mind goes blank. Then he hears Woo-suk's voice in his memory. Breathe. Start with what you know. He reads the first problem carefully, recognizes the pattern, applies the appropriate formula, checks his work, moves to the next. Problem after problem. He works methodically. Some are easy automated responses from months of practice. Others require careful thought, but his brain accesses the necessary knowledge. A few problems stump him completely. He skips them, returns later, makes educated guesses when necessary. The mathematics section ends. Ji-woo feels cautiously optimistic. Not perfect, but solid. Better than he'd feared. The exam continues through English, science, social studies. 8 grueling hours of sustained mental effort. When the final section concludes, Ji-woo's hand is cramping, his head pounding, his body exhausted, but he's finished. It's over. The weeks waiting for results are torturous. Life continues. Regular academy classes, household routines, but everything feels suspended, held in limbo until the scores arrive. Ji-woo continues meeting Woo-suk in the mornings, though now they work on university-level material just for interest, no longer drilling for an exam. The pressure has lifted, replaced by genuine curiosity about mathematics for its own sake. What will you study if you get into university? Woo-suk asks one morning. I'm not sure yet. Maybe engineering, something practical. You should consider mathematics. Ji-woo laughs. Professor, I barely passed calculus. I'm not mathematician material. Neither was I. Initially, Woo-suk says. I struggled in high school, failed my first university mathematics course, but I loved it despite struggling. That passion matters more than natural talent. Really? You failed a course. Differential equations. Had to retake it twice. Woo-suk smiles slightly at the memory. My professor told me I should switch majors, find something easier, but I was stubborn. What changed? I met someone who taught me differently, who helped me see patterns I couldn't see before, like I did for you. He pauses. You remind me of myself at your age. Not in ability, you're less naturally gifted than I was, but in determination. That counts for more than people realize. Ji-woo feels honored by the comparison, by Woo-suk's rare vulnerability. If I do study mathematics, will you still help me? If you study mathematics, you won't need my help. You'll be beyond what I can teach. There's pride in Woo-suk's voice. But yes, I'll always be available if you need guidance. Results arrive on a Wednesday morning. Ji-woo checks online at the exact moment they're released. His heart hammering so hard he feels dizzy. The numbers appear on screen. His scores in each section. His percentile rankings. His overall performance. Mathematics, 78th percentile. Tears spring to Ji-woo's eyes. 78th percentile. Not perfect, not genius level, but respectable, far beyond what anyone including himself expected months ago. His overall scores are strong enough for admission to decent universities. Not the most prestigious, not Seoul National or Korea University, but solid mid-tier institutions with good programs. He calls Woo-suk immediately, can barely speak through his emotion. Professor, I got my scores. I scored 78th percentile in mathematics. There's a pause. Then Woo-suk's voice, warmer than Ji-woo has ever heard it. That's excellent, Ji-woo. You should be proud. I couldn't have done it without you. You did it yourself. I just showed you the path. Can I come see you? I want to thank you properly. Come tomorrow morning. Our usual time. The next morning, Ji-woo arrives with a gift. A book of mathematical poetry he found at a bookstore. Poems that blend numbers with emotion. It's perfect for Woo-suk. Woo-suk accepts it with visible surprise. You didn't need to do this. I wanted to. You gave me more than just mathematics lessons. You gave me confidence, a sense that I could overcome my limitations. Your limitations were never as severe as you believed, Woo-suk says. You simply needed guidance and work. You provided the work. They sit in comfortable silence for a moment. The classroom quiet around them, morning light filtering through the windows. What will you do now? Ji-woo asks. Keep teaching at the academy? For now. Maybe eventually I'll write again. Publish under a different name, without seeking recognition. Just contribute to the mathematical conversation. He pauses. Teaching you reminded me that mathematics isn't just about recognition or career advancement. It's about the beauty of the discipline itself. About helping others see that beauty. I'd forgotten that. So I helped you too. In a way, yes. You reminded me why I chose this path originally. Ji-woo smiles. Then we helped each other. Better? Woo-suk asks after an hour. A little, Ji-woo admits. Good. Come back tomorrow. And the day after. We'll get you ready for the Sunyang. Your family problems won't disappear, but you can still pass this exam. Both things can be true simultaneously. The recovery. Ji-woo returns to the morning sessions. The work is harder now. He's distracted, tired, emotionally depleted.
But Woo-seok adjusts his teaching approach. He gives shorter, more focused problems. He checks in about Ji-woo's well-being without being invasive. He's patient in ways he's never been with other students. At home, things stabilize somewhat. Ji-woo's father doesn't return. Min-jung recovers from the shock and redoubles her work hours, determined to save enough money for emergencies. She apologizes to Ji-woo for the disruption, for the instability. You have nothing to apologize for, Ji-woo tells her. None of this is your fault. Just promise me you'll do your best on the Soonyoung, she says. That's all I ask, your best. I promise. With 5 weeks until the exam, Ji-woo's scores begin recovering. Not fully back to his peak, but climbing steadily. He works with desperate intensity, knowing how much is riding on this single test, his future, his mother's hopes, the culmination of years of struggle. Woo-seok pushes him harder than ever, drilling him on weak areas, forcing him to explain his reasoning out loud, building not just knowledge but confidence. The sessions extend beyond their allotted 2 hours. Woo-seok never mentions compensation, never suggests this is beyond his obligation. Other students notice the special attention and complain. The academy director calls Woo-seok again. You're showing favoritism. Other parents are upset. I'm helping a student who needs help and is willing to work for it. Woo-seok replies. If other students want the same attention, they can arrive at 7 a.m. This isn't sustainable, Professor G. I'll decide what's sustainable for me. The director backs off, recognizing he can't force the issue without losing his best mathematics instructor.
The exam. The day of the Soonyoung arrives cold and gray. Across South Korea, hundreds of thousands of students converge on testing centers, their futures hanging on the next 8 hours. Parents gather outside test sites, some crying, others praying at makeshift shrines. Ji-woo arrives at his designated testing location, a middle school converted for the day into an examination center. His hands shake despite the hours of preparation. He sees Woo-seok standing near the entrance, unexpected and somehow reassuring. Professor, what are you doing here? Making sure you arrive on time, Woo-seok says, and telling you one last thing. You're ready? You've worked harder than anyone in that building. Trust your preparation. What if I blank out? What if I panic? Then you breathe. Skip that problem, move to the next one, and return later. The exam doesn't require perfection. It requires competence. You're competent. Ji-woo nods, drawing strength from Woo-seok's certainty. Thank you, Professor, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Thank me after you pass. Ji-woo enters the building with other students, all wearing identical nervous expressions. They're led to classrooms, seated at individual desks, given strict instructions about procedure. The atmosphere is suffocating with tension. The exam begins. The first section is Korean, Ji-woo's strongest subject. He works through it steadily, his confidence building. Then mathematics. The problems appear on the page, and for one terrifying moment his mind goes blank. Then he hears Woo-seok's voice in his memory. Breathe. Start with what you know. He reads the first problem carefully, recognizes the pattern, applies the appropriate formula, checks his work, moves to the next. Problem after problem. He works methodically. Some are easy, automated responses from months of practice. Others require careful thought, but his brain accesses the necessary knowledge. A few problems stump him completely. He skips them, returns later, makes educated guesses when necessary. The mathematics section ends. Ji-woo feels cautiously optimistic. Not perfect, but solid. Better than he'd feared. The exam continues through English, science, social studies. 8 grueling hours of sustained mental effort. When the final section concludes, Ji-woo's hand is cramping, his head pounding, his body exhausted. But he's finished. It's over. The weeks waiting for results are torturous. Life continues. Regular academy classes, household routines, but everything feels suspended, held in limbo until the scores arrive. Ji-woo continues meeting Woo-seok in the mornings, though now they work on university-level material just for interest, no longer drilling for an exam. The pressure has lifted, replaced by genuine curiosity about mathematics for its own sake. What will you study if you get into university? Woo-seok asks one morning. I'm not sure yet. Maybe engineering? Something practical. You should consider mathematics. Ji-woo laughs. Professor, I barely passed calculus. I'm not mathematician material. Neither was I. Initially, Woo-seok says. I struggled in high school, failed my first university mathematics course, but I loved it despite struggling. That passion matters more than natural talent. Really? You failed a course? Differential equations. Had to retake it twice. Woo-seok smiles slightly at the memory. My professor told me I should switch majors, find something easier, but I was stubborn. What changed? I met someone who taught me differently, who helped me see patterns I couldn't see before, like I did for you. He pauses. You remind me of myself at your age. Not in ability. You're less naturally gifted than I was, but in determination. That counts for more than people realize. Ji-woo feels honored by the comparison, by Woo-seok's rare vulnerability. If I do study mathematics, will you still help me? If you study mathematics, you won't need my help. You'll be beyond what I can teach. There's pride in Woo-seok's voice. But yes, I'll always be available if you need guidance. The results arrive on a Wednesday morning. Ji-woo checks online at the exact moment they're released, his heart hammering so hard he feels dizzy. The numbers appear on screen. his scores in each section, his percentile rankings, his overall performance. Mathematics, 78th percentile. Tears spring to Ji-woo's eyes. 78th percentile. Not perfect, not genius level, but respectable, far beyond what anyone including himself expected months ago. His overall scores are strong enough for admission to decent universities, not the most prestigious, not Seoul National or Korea University, but solid mid-tier institutions with good programs. He calls Woo-suk immediately, can barely speak through his emotion. Professor, I got my scores. I scored 78th percentile in mathematics. There's a pause. Then Woo-suk's voice, warmer than Ji-woo has ever heard it. That's excellent, Ji-woo. You should be proud. I couldn't have done it without you. You did it yourself. I just showed you the path. Can I come see you? I want to thank you properly. Come tomorrow morning, our usual time. The gratitude. The next morning, Ji-woo arrives with a gift, a book of mathematical poetry he found at a bookstore, poems that blend numbers with emotion. It's perfect for Woo-suk. Woo-suk accepts it with visible surprise. You didn't need to do this. I wanted to. You gave me more than just mathematics lessons. You gave me confidence, a sense that I could overcome my limitations. Your limitations were never as severe as you believed, Woo-suk says. You simply needed guidance and work. You provided the work. They sit in comfortable silence for a moment, the classroom quiet around them, morning light filtering through the windows. What will you do now? Ji-woo asks. Keep teaching at the academy. For now, maybe eventually I'll write again. Publish under a different name, without seeking recognition. Just contribute to the mathematical conversation. He pauses. Teaching you reminded me that mathematics isn't just about recognition or career advancement. It's about the beauty of the discipline itself, about helping others see that beauty. I'd forgotten that. So I helped you too. In a way, yes. You reminded me why I chose this path originally. Ji-woo smiles. Then we helped each other. The new beginning. Months later, Ji-woo begins university at a solid engineering program. His first mathematics course is differential equations, the same class Woo-suk failed twice. The professor introduces the material, and Ji-woo recognizes it immediately from his sessions with Woo-suk. They'd covered this exact topic during those final weeks, just for enrichment. He understands the concepts before the professor even finishes explaining them. He emails Woo-suk. Remember when you said I'd be beyond what you could teach? You already taught me next semester's material. I'm ahead of the curve thanks to you. Woo-suk replies simply. Good. Keep going. Ji-woo does keep going. He excels in his classes, discovers genuine love for mathematics, considers switching his major. His mother is proud beyond words. His sister tells everyone her brother is a genius. He's not a genius. He knows that. He's just someone who worked hard, who had help when he needed it, who refused to give up on himself. During semester break he visits the academy, finds Woo-suk in the same classroom, teaching another group of anxious students preparing for their own Soonyoung exams. After class they talk. Woo-suk looks better somehow, less worn, more engaged. He mentions he's been writing again, submitting papers to journals under a pseudonym, slowly rebuilding his academic life from the ashes. One of my papers was accepted, Woo-suk says with quiet satisfaction. Minor journal, nothing prestigious, but it's published. It's out there contributing to mathematical knowledge. That's wonderful, Professor. It's a start. He looks at Ji-woo with genuine warmth. Seeing you succeed made me want to succeed again, to not just exist but to live. So thank you for that. We keep saving each other, Ji-woo observes. Perhaps that's what teaching is supposed to be, Woo-suk replies. Not one person imparting wisdom to another, but two people helping each other become better versions of themselves. They sit together in that classroom where Ji-woo once struggled with basic derivatives, where Woo-suk once saw only the grinding routine of academy teaching. Now it feels different, a place of transformation, of mutual growth, of mathematics transcending mere numbers to become something human and meaningful. Outside, Seoul continues its relentless pace. Students flood academies, preparing for their own trials. Parents sacrifice for their children's futures. The education system grinds forward with all its pressures and inequalities. But in this classroom, two people found something valuable, a reminder that behind every equation is a human story, that genius isn't required when determination and good teaching combine, that sometimes the people we teach end up teaching us the most important lessons. Ji-woo leaves the academy that evening feeling grateful, not just for passing the Soonyoung or getting into university, but for finding in mathematics a language that connected him to another person, a shared space where two very different people could understand each other perfectly. Ji-woo-suk watches him go, then returns to preparing tomorrow's lesson. But now he prepares differently, with more care, more hope, more awareness that any student walking through that door might be another Ji-woo, another chance to remember what mathematics is truly for. The numbers on the whiteboard glow under fluorescent lights, patient and eternal, waiting to reveal their patterns to anyone willing to look closely enough. 5 years pass. Ji-woo graduates with honors, accepts a position at a tech company, but keeps studying mathematics in his spare time. He's working toward a graduate degree part-time, driven by genuine fascination with the subject that once defeated him. He receives an email one day, an invitation to speak at his old high school about overcoming academic challenges. He accepts, prepares a speech about persistence and finding the right mentors. At the event in front of hundreds of students facing their own Sunyoung pressure, Ji-woo tells his story honestly, the struggle, the failure, the breakthrough. He credits his success to hard work, but also to a teacher who saw potential where others saw only limitation. In the back of the auditorium, unnoticed by most, sits Ji-woo Sok. He didn't tell Ji-woo he was coming, just showed up to listen, curious about what his former student would say. As Ji-woo speaks passionately about mathematics, about learning, about not giving up, Woo-sok feels something he hasn't felt in years, pure uncomplicated pride. Not in his own achievement, but in someone else's. The kind of pride that reminds you why teaching, despite all its frustrations and limitations, can sometimes be the most meaningful work in the world. After the speech they meet. Embrace. No words are necessary. Their shared history speaks louder than anything they could say. Later, walking together through Seoul's streets, Ji-woo asks, "Do you remember that first day I came asking for help? When I couldn't even do basic derivatives? I remember thinking you were hopeless." Woo-sok admits with his characteristic honesty, "I almost turned you away. What made you say yes?" Woo-sok considers the question carefully. "You admitted you didn't understand. Most students pretend. They fake comprehension, copy answers, hide their confusion behind pride. You had the courage to be vulnerable. That courage was worth nurturing. I'm glad you did," Ji-woo says. "You changed my life. We changed each other's lives," Woo-sok corrects. That's the beautiful mathematics of teaching. Both sides of the equation transform simultaneously. They part ways at a subway station, both heading to their respective homes, their respective lives. But they've made plans to meet monthly, to continue their mathematical discussions, to maintain the connection that began in struggle and grew into something neither of them expected, a friendship built on numbers, proven through patience, solved through mutual respect. The city lights glow against the darkening sky. Somewhere in Seoul, thousands of students sit in academy classrooms, grinding through practice problems, dreaming of test scores and university admissions. Most will succeed through conventional means. A few will fail despite their efforts. But occasionally, just occasionally, a struggling student will find the right teacher at the right moment, and both will discover that mathematics isn't just about solutions and proofs. It's about connection, about seeing patterns not just in numbers but in people, about recognizing that genius isn't required when compassion and persistence combine. The equation of teaching balances perfectly. One teacher who rediscovered purpose plus one student who found his potential equals 2 lives transformed, multiplied by every future student they'll each inspire, approaching infinity as the years pass. And that both of them now understand is the most elegant proof of all. A brilliant mathematician saw numbers where others saw nothing, and one struggling student would help him remember what it means to be human. But what happens when genius becomes isolation and teaching becomes salvation? One man lost everything to scandal and found refuge in equations. One boy faced failure and found determination through guidance. Together they proved that mathematics isn't cold logic, it's the warmest language two people can share when they're willing to learn from each other. Sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't theorems or proofs but the simple truth that we all need someone to believe in us when we can't believe in ourselves.